This French dip will save your life someday, or at least your lunch. Let's make some French dip.
We're gonna start by making the bread, and the dough needs to sit overnight, so it's important we start now so we can let this sit and then actually make it tomorrow. I'm starting with 73 grams of water, and I'm going with a little less than 1/8 of a teaspoon of yeast. Next I have 73 grams of bread flour. I'm gonna take my water and yeast mixture and pour it into my bread flour. And I'm just gonna mix with my fingers. And luckily that is all the work we're actually gonna do for the night. So go ahead and cover that in plastic wrap and leave that overnight. All right, I'll get back to you in the morning. It's been overnight and now we're finishing up the bread. To start, get 125 grams of bread flour and then mix in 4 grams of fine sea salt. Put that aside for now. Next you'll want 85 grams of water, and I've heated up to lukewarm, about 90 degrees again. And then I'm gonna drop in a little less than 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. Mix that for about a minute or two. Then put that aside, add in that flour and salt mixture. So here's what we made from last night. There are a ton of bubbles in it and it's super airy, which is exactly how it's supposed to look. So now that it's been about 2 minutes with the yeast mixture, I'm gonna pour that in. And then I'm gonna pour the dough we made from last night. This is gonna be hard to get in. It's so sticky. I'm gonna do my best to mix this together. Because I don't have a stain mixer, I'm just gonna use my hands right here. I'm gonna knead this together. Sloppy. Look how silky this is. Now that our dough is silky and combined, we're gonna put that into a greased bowl. I'm gonna lightly grease this with some butter. I'm gonna try and get this as best as I can. And it doesn't look like much, but I'm only making 1 loaf of bread. Cover that and let it rest at room temp for an hour. So this bread needs to be really airy, and the way we're gonna do that is by folding it over itself. So this part helps if you grease your hand. Grab just the edge of the dough here, bring it up a little bit, and then just fold it over itself. So just grab the edge like that, pull it up, and make sure not to tear the dough. If it seems like it's gonna break, just let it go. So just go around that one time, and that was turn 1 of 3. So we are doing 3 of those, and we're gonna let it rest for 25 minutes in between. So let this rest for 25 minutes at room temperature. It's been 25 minutes, so it's time for turn 2. Once again, greasy hands. Just go about 1 inch from the edge, and then fold it over. Now we're gonna let that sit for another 25 minutes. This is the 3rd and final time I'm gonna fold it over and be even more delicate this time. And you'll feel that it's starting to come together a little bit. Now for the last time, cover that and let it rest for 45 minutes. All right, now that we have a total of 3 turns, it's time to take our dough out of our bowl. So go ahead and generously flour your surface, scrape out your dough, and try not to degas it. Wow, this is impossible to work with. I'd say that's pretty good. So we're trying to get a rectangle shape, and this dough is obviously pretty hard to work with because it's very loose and jiggly. You're also gonna generously flour the top. All right, before we let it settle for too long, I'm gonna quickly get it onto some parchment paper and onto this board that I'm gonna put in the oven. All right, now that we have our loaf, it is pretty big. Now you wanna cover it with a dish that's not gonna touch the sides. Now it looks like it should do it. So now I'm gonna leave this for 1 more hour, and then after that we're gonna bake.
Now while you're waiting for an hour, you can preheat your oven to 475 degrees Fahrenheit. You also wanna put a pizza stone in the oven on the middle rack, and you wanna put a cast iron pan on the lowest rack. Let those all preheat for an hour, and you're ready to go.
All right, now it's been an hour, so we're finally, after all this time, ready to cook our bread. I'm gonna have to cut it in half that way. It is what it is, and we're gonna make it work. Now that it's time to go in, lightly spray it with water, and then place that in the oven. As soon as you place it in the oven, spray the oven with water, and then you're gonna put 1 cup of ice in that cast iron pan underneath the bread, and that's gonna help to steam the bread. After about 15 minutes, take out that pan and lower that heat to 375. Once that's been in for 5 minutes at 375, pull it out. Here's our finished bread loaf, and it is pretty big, which is why this sandwich is a 2-person sandwich. And at the end, I'm gonna actually cut it down the middle that way so that I can fit it into my bowl with the sauce. But just look at that thing. I mean, you can hear the hollow, which is how you know it's done. So don't cut that until it comes down to room temperature. But now it's time to actually get started on cooking. So here I got 2 sweet onions that I'm gonna thinly slice. One of them is gonna be used for the sauce, and the other one's gonna be used at the end for the sandwich. And get ready to cry.
Now I'm just gonna thinly slice this. All right, so now I'm just gonna put these in a bowl. Next, I got a little over a pound of some ribeye steak here. Wow, this almost looks more like a New York strip, but it's not. I want very thin slices here, almost like shaving it off. I'm actually gonna cut this fat off here. So all this fat right here, I'm actually gonna use in the broth. Like you want it to be about this thin, like 1/8 of an inch, almost paper thin. That's what we're looking for. Any extra fat, I'm either gonna toss or throw in the broth. Now I feel like that's probably enough for one sandwich. So this leftover here, I'm gonna actually use in the broth to make it a little richer. So I'm just gonna chunk it up. So this is gonna be used to richen up my broth. And then here's our beautiful ribeye for our French dip. So the last thing that I'm gonna do, I need a 1/4 cup of shiradashi for the recipe. I don't have that, but I do have hondashi, which is kind of like the powder version in a way, not quite. But with a little soy sauce and a little mirin, I can actually make shiradashi. I need a 1/4 cup of shiradashi, so I'm doing a 1/4 cup of water. Not even kidding you, it smells like fish food. 1/2 teaspoon of that, kind of looks like yeast. Then we're doing a teaspoon of soy sauce, followed by a teaspoon of mirin. Give that a stir. And this is gonna go into our au jus sauce. I'm just gonna start by throwing this in by itself, no oil. Now really quickly, I'm gonna add in a tablespoon of butter. Next, I'm gonna add in 1/2 of those sweet onions, adding a pinch of salt and a pinch of sugar. Once your onions look like this, you're ready for your beef broth. I'm gonna add in 1 1/4 cups, and I'm gonna add in 1 teaspoon of thyme. Let that simmer for 15 minutes. I added some of that beef back in just for the flavor. Now I'm doing 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce, and now I'm pouring in the shiradashi we made earlier, about 1/8 of a cup. I said 1/4 of a cup earlier, it's actually 1/8 of a cup. Let that simmer for a few more minutes, and then take it off to strain. I'm gonna pour this into this thermos to keep it hot while I cook the meat. Put that aside for now. Next I'm gonna go in with a little oil. I'm gonna go in with those onions now. Go on with a little salt. Once your onions have a nice sear on both sides, push them over to the side. Then get your meat. Give this a nice flip so that it looks like that. Now some of these pieces are looking done, but some are still a little pink. So I'm gonna give it a few more minutes. Then you can actually mix the onion and meat together. I'm gonna try and cut some of this up. I'm gonna see if I can actually fit my bread into the same pan. So here is my loaf. Cutting this thing down the middle. I'm gonna put that into the fat. Spread some mayonnaise on those toasted buns. Next I'm going with some Swiss cheese here. I'm gonna cut some chives on top here for garnish. All right guys, now that we have this luxurious, fat French dip king, go ahead and crown it. Oh my God. And because it's so fat, I'm actually gonna cut it down the middle this way. This crust is thick. Come on, don't you just wanna dip that right in there? Time for this taste test. You really gotta dunk it in. Oh! Yeah, that's insane. If you stayed this far in the video, I really appreciate that. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.